The most successful commercial in human history didn't buy a single second of television airtime. Instead, 8 million people willingly sat and stared at a live broadcast of a company secretly setting up. Everything you just saw cost hundreds of millions of dollars to produce. The company that paid for all of it makes a drink that costs 11 cents to manufacture. And here's the part that should genuinely disturb you. Red Bull doesn't actually make the drink either. So what exactly is Red Bull selling?
While most other beverage companies look like an enormous chemical processing plant spanning over hundreds of acres, equipped with bottling facilities and logistics warehouses, Red Bull's headquarters looks like a design agency. The entire liquid inside every Red Bull can is manufactured by a company called Rausch, an Austrian fruit juice producer. Red Bull doesn't even own a single production line. They don't even employ chemical engineers. They contract out the entire product. Now, here's why this matters. Traditional beverage manufacturing requires massive infrastructural investments, thousands of staff, and a global cold chain logistics network. By outsourcing all of that, forget the cost. Red Bull eliminates almost every possibility related to system failure. That's a structure most consumer product companies would consider physically impossible. For every can sold, Red Bull keeps the majority of the retail price as operating capital, and they reinvest almost all of it into one thing.
Before we get to where that money goes, because that's where this story gets strange, let's talk about what you're actually drinking. 80 milligrams of caffeine per can, roughly about the same as a standard cup of coffee. The major highlight of the ingredient list is taurine, an amino acid your body produces naturally. The name comes from the Latin word for bull. Red Bull didn't name their drink after the animal for branding reasons alone. They named it after the result that their early marketing campaigns claimed to give: superhuman energy. The science on taurine's performance benefits is, at best, inconclusive. 27 grams of sugar, water, and a proprietary flavoring blend. The honest chemical reality is this: Red Bull's performance advantage over a standard cup of coffee is minimal to non-existent. The caffeine content is equivalent. The taurine and vitamins are largely cosmetic additions. So why does Red Bull feel different?
In 2006, researchers at MIT's Sloan School of Management ran a study on energy drink performance. One group received a standard-priced energy drink. Another received the exact same drink at a discounted price. The group that paid full price solved significantly more puzzles and reported higher energy levels. The drink didn't change. The perception of value did. And Red Bull understood this before the research even existed. The slim can wasn't chosen for efficiency. It was chosen because it fits in your hand like a precision instrument, not a commodity beverage. The silver finish signals technology. The blue and red logo signals speed and danger. Every visible and non-visible detail of that can was engineered to tell your brain that you are consuming something powerful before you even take a sip.
Here's how traditional advertising works. A brand pays a network to fit their message inside the content people actually want to watch. The viewer tolerates the ad. The brand gets 30 seconds of golden attention. On October 14th, 2012, 8 million people watched a live YouTube stream of a man standing on the edge of space, about to jump back to Earth. It became the most watched live stream in internet history at that point. There were no commercial breaks. There was no network. There was no broadcaster. There was just a man in a Red Bull suit, falling from 39 kilometers above the planet, with the Red Bull logo on every surface in frame. A 30-second Super Bowl ad in 2012 cost approximately $3.5 million. Red Bull didn't buy 30 seconds of attention. They owned 8 hours of it, globally, for free. Because they didn't buy ad space, they created the event that became the news. And that wasn't even their most profitable move. Subscribe, because what they did next with the money from that jump changed how every major brand on Earth now operates.
In 2007, Red Bull formally incorporated Red Bull Media House as a standalone division, not for marketing or PR. It is a fully operational media company with its own production studios, licensing division, distribution network, and content library. They literally own a Formula One team, not as a sponsor, but as the constructor. They own the cars, the technology, the intellectual property of every aerodynamic advancement their engineers develop. They own Red Bull Records, a music label that signed artists specifically because music creates specific emotional associations with the brand in contexts, because energy drinks can't profitably advertise on radio and streaming platforms. And here's the part that fundamentally breaks conventional business logic. Red Bull Media House licenses its own content back to traditional broadcasters for a profit. the company that other brands pay to appear on television is now selling footage to those same networks. They literally flipped from content buyer to content seller, a true circular economic system.
Red Bull's YouTube channel has over 14 million subscribers. Their content regularly generates tens of millions of organic views per upload. This saves millions of dollars in advertisement budget, and all of it comes from brand content that people actively choose to watch. Think about how rare that is. We usually skip ads the absolute second we can. But Red Bull made commercials that feel like a scene from your favorite movie. They turned a product pitch into nostalgia, the kind of video you actually search for and watch on loop. Every extreme sports video Red Bull produces serves 3 simultaneous functions. First, it generates direct advertising revenue through YouTube's partner program. Red Bull is paid to host their own marketing. Second, it builds cultural credibility with exactly the demographic that would otherwise ignore energy drink advertising entirely. Young, active, aspirational audiences who consider themselves too sophisticated for traditional ads. Third, every viral moment drives search volume for the brand, which drives retail sales, which funds the next piece of content. The drink funds the content. The content builds the culture. The culture sells the drink. It's a closed loop that gets stronger every year.
In 2023, Red Bull sold 12.1 billion cans. At an average retail price of roughly $3.50 per can, that represents approximately $42 billion in retail value. For a company that doesn't own a factory, doesn't run traditional commercials, and manufactures a product with 11 cents worth of ingredients, it sounds too good to be true. For instance, Coca-Cola spends approximately $4 billion annually on traditional advertising. Red Bull's entire marketing budget is a fraction of that. Yet Red Bull costs roughly 3 times what a Coca-Cola product costs. The margin difference isn't the drink, it's the infrastructure they chose not to build, and the media empire they built instead.
Red Bull proves something that most business schools still struggle to teach. In the attention economy, the most valuable asset isn't the product, it's the ability to exist in people's minds without being invited. Every other energy drink sells caffeine. Monster sells rebellion. Celsius sells fitness. They are all selling a feeling through a liquid delivery mechanism. But Red Bull doesn't sell energy. It sells the feeling that the most interesting life is being lived by someone holding one of their cans. And they built $1 billion media empire just to make that feeling look real. The drink was always secondary. It just took the rest of the industry 20 years to realize it.